from getting to A to B on a horse is a little bit different than the terminology the world would like us to believe when we're in a car. For instance, when you're on your horse and you're going from A to B, you're riding. If you're on a horse and you got a bunch of cattle in front of you and the range hand there is paying you some money, now all of a sudden you're not riding anymore, you're driving. Now, a long time ago, everybody understood that when you were driving, you were getting paid to do a job. You were for hire. Today, in this age, since 1925, since the first driver's license came into place in North America, in California, the definitions for that word drive or driver were in that document, and they were relative to somebody that's getting paid or for hire. In other words, it was for totally commercial purposes. If you were a private man going to the grocery store or taking your mother to a dental appointment, etc., and you weren't getting paid for it, you weren't driving. You were sojourning. In the United States, some people have applied the common law principle of the liberty and the freedom to go from A to B without acting in commerce, and they call it common law right of travel. There's a guy named Charlie Sprinkle in California that put charges against Governor Reagan when he was in, his wife, all of his officials and their wives, for obstruction of his, what did he call it? He called it breach of trust, for obstructing his ability to travel freely. So today, after he did that, he was approached and they eventually begged him to drop the charges because they couldn't have the charges dropped because he was saying, I have liberty in this country and you're obstructing my liberty by telling me I need to ask permission and go sign up for a license when I'm not for hire and I'm not in commerce. I'm just in common law travel. And so they wouldn't listen to him, so he brought charges against Reagan and all of his staff, and they finally came and begged him to drop the charges because they couldn't get the charges dismissed from court. He had a valid concern. And so he agreed that he would do so, and that afternoon he went out on the road, and because they told him, if you drop the charges, we'll make sure that no traffic officer in the state of California ever bothers you again. And he said, well, I'm going to test that this afternoon. They said, well, you go right ahead. And so he did. He went out that afternoon, and he raced down the highway 100 miles an hour, past a California Highway Patrol, a chip on the side of the road. And they, of course, pulled him over right away. And they asked his name and driver's license, and he said, well, I'm Charlie Sprinkle. And right away they said, oh, well, Mr. Sprinkle, we just pulled you over to see if we could help you out, see how you were doing. He said, well, I'm doing just fine, guys, but you have a great day, and off he went. Well, that was 39 years ago. And that man is still on the road today, sojourning, remember that word, he's sojourning in his pursuit of happiness and liberty. In this country, we got a little bit better than what he's got. We still got this Bible here. And if you happen to believe in it, not everybody does, but if you do, this is an opportunity. And even if you don't, it might be of interest to you, because when you're a minister of this particular book, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean you're talking about Jesus Christ, or you're talking about a building with a cross on top of it and a white picket fence. What it means is you're helping somebody without requiring to be paid. You're not in commerce. So if you pre-notify these people that assume that you're already registered at birth, you got a social insurance number, and you say, hey, I decided to take up my faith and beliefs, and I need to know from you a few things. Have you got any authority to intimidate me, obstruct me, or prevent me from practicing my faith and beliefs and not registering with your commercial system, not submitting and begging to you for permission to sojourn, but can you prevent me from practicing my faith and beliefs and delivering the ministry to people? As it turns out, they cannot. In this country, your faith and beliefs are prime. They are sacred. And to prove so, 10 or 20 years ago, a Sikh wouldn't work for the RCMP, or couldn't work for the RCMP because he wouldn't take his turban off, and he sued the RCMP. I'm not suggesting that you go sue people, but he did. And just to give as an example, they had to pay that man $10 million because they discriminated against his ability to practice his faith and beliefs. Just to give you a small example of how powerful faith and beliefs are when they don't even involve this book and a Christian monarch defending it. Can you imagine the power and authority somebody might have if they stood up and said, I can't be part of your commercial system because I believe it's a false God, truly and sincerely. Do you have any authority to intimidate me outside of this book and go submit myself to your law? I'm traveling ecclesiastically. I'm in conveyance here, passing the word of Christ and my other things that I do, helping people without expecting money. So I'm not subject to your codes, rules, and regulations. And if you intend to intimidate me, I'll have to lay in information against you under threat, duress, and intimidation to bring you before your own law authorities to be subject to your own law. Because in this country, Section 32 of the Charter, which everybody has normally been taught as law, tells you right there it only applies to the government. Not to you, but to the government. So the question is why Section 52 tells you that no provision of the Constitution can be overwritten or confused with any other law in Canada. So in other words, Section 32 tells you it only applies to the government, so no other law, such as the Criminal Code or anybody overseeing it, can come along and tell you, oh, it applies to you, unless they can prove that you're government. Well, when you go down and you get that driver's license, you're providing them proof that you're government. Same thing as you did when you got the social insurance number. You're providing them proof that you're government.